Okay, we just finished a horrendous drive from Massachusetts to Durham, North Carolina, where we're playing tomorrow. So I'm in the Marriott Hotel right now and just kind of checking out the bar scene here, which is pretty exciting and stuff. You never know who you're going to run into. Look who's here. It's Mr. Kunkel.
Just having a afternoon aperitif.
Ooh, well, enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. I'm going to continue on my little journey. Oh man, you are in for a treat. Here's Armando Garcia, and you know him as Yogi. Hi, Yogi.
How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Just been out walking around, and
Find anything exciting?
Sunday here, it's nothing going on.
Sunday in Durham. That sounds like a song title, doesn't it?
It's going to be, yeah, maybe a Mancini song or something like that. So everybody's like been intrigued by you on this tour because you're the hardest working guy on that stage. You're always working.
I'm one of the hardest working
Yeah,
guys.
I know, but you're the one on camera right now.
Oh,
so
sorry.
No, but yeah, you have a great team
Yeah.
with you out here.
Yeah.
But we've just met on this tour for the first time, really.
Even though it does feel
It
at times
feels like
we've
I've known you
for
forever.
for a long
And
time.
I'm
yeah.
loving it, and we are going to stay
Oh, thank
bros
you.
forever.
And I feel that way too.
Yeah.
You know.
But I'm just curious. We've talked about a bunch of things, but I'm sure everybody would be kind of intrigued in how you, kind of music you've worked on, how you got into this, who your connections were, and all that stuff.
Oh, how I ended up in the circus.
Yeah, the ringmaster.
I think like you, we didn't plan on this. We kind of fell into it because if I'd known that I was going to get into it, I would have prepared myself a little more technically, education-wise. You know, gone to luthier school, electronic school. I tried taking various musical instrument lessons, but unlike some people, I don't have the what it takes. So, and I've always told people who do have that, I call it a gift because it is a gift blessing to be able to play anything at a decent level, to not waste it, to carry on with it.
Yeah.
But no, it was totally accident. Like I said, if I knew it was what I was going to do, but I would have gotten into it. But because of the circus finding me, my life has had these turns left and right to where I am today. You know, so long story as short as possible.
No, no time limit here.
I was from California, San Joaquin Valley, Fresno. I felt culturally repressed in Fresno. Taking trips as a teenager to Los Angeles, San Francisco, lucky to have both of these
Yeah.
mega cultural metropolises nearby, you know, to see gigs. Anytime I wanted to see any organization you were involved with, they were already sold out, like quick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you guys were rocking. But as far as my music collection as a teenager, you and your partner in crime, Mr. Kunkel, like I'm a credits freak even to this day.
Yeah,
I
me
mean, I
too.
saw your guys' names so much together as like the happening rhythm section, you know, and then reading interviews about you guys and what have you. So meeting you decades later feels like I know something about you, even though
Yeah,
I've never
we're
met
connected,
you.
even though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like through listening to your body of work throughout the decades, it's like I feel like I said, I know part of you, and we talk about stuff will pop up. And I go, hey, did you play on the Spectrum album with Billy Cobham? And then that off we go on that
Yeah,
conversation.
a lot of tangents.
What your experience was with that, and the different people you played with, and then I started asking about what those people were like, and asking you and Russell, about what that person was like on that particular session, who's no longer with us, i.e. when we talked about Jesse A. Davis,
Yeah.
with Dr. My Eyes, your experience with Tommy Bolin on the Billy Cobham record, and especially recently with the me watching it and going to finish it and recommend it to anybody. The documentary on Native American musicians' influence going back to the beginning of, I don't want to say time, but 1850s on to where we're at now.
Yeah.
And their influence on all genres of music.
That's a great. What's the name title of
And it's
it?
called Rumble.
Rumble, because it is. I watched it the other night on the bus, and
Yeah,
I was crying when it got to Jesse.
Oh yeah, no, I was pretty choked up,
Yeah.
and I still got like maybe a half hour on it. It got to the part where Stevie Solis, who
Yeah.
I know and worked with before, going off to New Mexico with Randy Castillo. I never worked with Randy, but I met Randy going back to Lita 4 Days, and
Yeah.
and then through various other people going to New Mexico to like get back to like his roots and kind of help him get out of that whole
Yeah,
LA
they were
insanity.
wound up really tight.
Yes, very, very. And so yeah, like I said, our conversations take those curves and off we go. So going back to me,
Yeah.
I've always liked music, and so growing up in California, in Fresno, quite honestly, I just always wanted to leave. I wanted to move elsewhere, and
Yeah.
that bongo sound, that's my a message. So, and so I had an uncle who was from Los Angeles, and he was quite an interesting character. Basically, a gangster. Loved him to death, but that was he was in L.A. and what's the best way to put it? He was involved heavily in the black market, and he met this lovely lady, and who was from Oregon, and says, "I got to get you out of this scene, and I'm taking you to Oregon so we could get you on a better path."
Yeah.
And they did that, and when he came down to visit, and he goes, because at that time I was living in the San Joaquin Valley housing projects, and I went to one of the first alternative schools sanctioned by the state of California in the mid '70s, and I was into like trying to learn how to play acoustic guitar. I had long hair, and I was I wasn't into getting into the gang banging scene, and all around me that was happening with my friends. I just wanted to escape from that, and he saw that, and he says, "Hey man, if you ever want to bust a move, you're more than welcome to come up to Oregon with me, where I live, and try to like launch off into a different environment direction than this." And so I took advantage of that, and I moved to Eugene, Springfield.
Oh, yeah.
And that was like 77, 78. And when I got up there, the economy had fallen out of Oregon because of it was based on lumber, quite a bit. That was the base, and the Canadian lumber industry was underselling the Oregon and basically the whole Northwest lumber
Yeah.
industry. So it created there weren't a lot of jobs for people. So I was looking for work, had got a few different gigs, and then this really, I wish I remember his name, but a really amazing employment guy, said, "Hey man, have you thought about Job Corps?" And I go, "Man, I just moved from California. I don't want to end up with a bunch of these cats from
Yeah.
my old hood and LA and different places, He goes, "No, man, it's a co-ed thing. It's on the coast. It's very structured, and basically the rules are tight to keep out people who don't want to take advantage of it."
Yeah.
I said, "Well, what's it encompass?" He goes, "Well, if you go there, you'll have job training for 2 years. You get weekends to go off as long as you're behaving, and you don't get kicked out for misbehaving. And there was people there. So I said, "No, I'd be interested." So I applied, got accepted, and then I was living on the Oregon coast in a place called Yachats near Newport. So when I got there, I met a lot of people from Washington State, Oregon. There was people there from Alaska. There was a lot of people who came up from California. really diverse, and that's really where I started listening to a lot of the heavier rock music that I like and to this day, i.e., your early Van Halen, Bonds, AC/DC, Judas Priest, new wave,
Yeah.
British heavy metal, and I like all that. I like all
I do
kinds
too,
of,
I
yeah,
do.
and those guys are great players, but I'd never been exposed to that because my thing was listening to you cats, Billy, Billy Cobham, George Duke, who we talked about,
Yeah.
blah blah blah, Zappa, and while I was there, I found out that they had a program that if you got accepted, you get a 2-year scholarship to go to a community college.
Oh, how cool.
And so I applied for it, and I got accepted. Oh, and when I got to the Job Corps Center, they had like a basic first-year college program. So I ended up taking my test again because for some reason, my high school test again because I went to alternative high school, and they kind of like,
They don't want to
well,
kind of recognize.
exactly. Even though it was
Yeah.
sanctioned by the state of California and
Yeah.
it was all legit, I went ahead and basically your GED, SAT thing, and passed that again. So I got involved with this first-year college program. So I was eligible to apply for a 2-year, remaining 2-year, my 2-year program scholarship to go to a community college. And at that time, during my teens and summers, I would go and do forestry stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, trail clearing, light maintenance, silviculture, that. So I was interested in that because, like, Fresno being really urban, I was interested in going close to, like, Kings Canyon National Park,
Oh, God,
Sequoia,
yeah.
Yosemite. That was all near where I grew up. That was a saving grace. I loved it.
I love like old Highway 49, going to, the Grass Valley in Auburn, Sutter Creek, and that.
We used to work at there was like a camp that we used to go to in Coarse Gold up there in Calaveras County. Mark Twain writes about that.
Yeah, the
it's-
jumping frog.
The jumping frog, yeah. Beautiful location, man. It was just lovely. And so when I moved to Oregon, man, I was like, wow, this is happening, I just said, man, I told Mike Spinarski, our tour manager, extraordinary.
Mike.
Look at that
Mike.
handsome man.
Gentlemen,
Hi, Mike.
hello, fellas.
Hi, Mike. Bye.
One of the hardest working men in show business.
Boy, no kidding.
And, well, just in general,
Man, he's like the plate spinner on Ed Sullivan, man. He's just got this shit all up in the air, trying to keep it up.
How many dishes can you do? So,
But he's not here right now, so let's talk about you.
Yeah. But anyway, so I applied. I got accepted to go for the 2-year forestry program. So I ended up moving to Portland, Oregon. So once again, like moving to Oregon was just like such a beautiful
Yeah.
state. I have roots there to this day. Love going back. So anyway, I ended up going to a college called Mount Hood Community College. And at Mount Hood Community College, there was a music program there, a vocal jazz, and then jazz small combo and jazz big band. And the guys who ran the program, excuse me, one of the guys' name was Hal Malcolm. I can't remember if he was the jazz or big band guy, and the other gent's name Larry. But between those two, those guys had a background going to Los Angeles and New York with all the big jazz musicians, big band players. I mean, those guys were all like personal friends, and your Stan Kentons, your Buddy Riches, and what have you. And their program was great. While I was going to school there, Diane Shure was one of the vocalists that was in the vocal program. Chris Body, young Chris Body,
Yeah,
was
wow.
one of the the big band players learning how to play trumpet. And my buddy Melvin Brannon III, who plays bass with the Dan Reed Network.
Oh, okay.
We used to ride the bus together, and he was one of the cats there, and
Wow.
other people. So Hal Malcolm and Larry Walker, I think his name was, they came up with the bright idea. It's like, hey man, with the connections what we have with the jazz agencies, and our music connections and manager connections, why don't we do a 3-day jazz festival, all genres, including some rhythm and blues, on our football, our track field, our track soccer field. And that's what they did. They just came up with the idea for this thing called the Mount Hood Festival of Jazz.
Oh, cool.
And from that, they bought a big stage in, they bought sound, lighting, Hollywood Lights out of Portland, Rick Reed Staging out of Portland, Oregon, and the sound company out of Seattle. The engineer used to do, the owner used to do Gordon Lightfoot. So they came up with this idea to do this program, and they had like the sound and lighting guys were all IATSE guys,
Okay.
and then they had 4 guys on deck who were IATSE. Everybody else was going to be volunteer. So it's like the word got out, hey, we need volunteers for stagehands. So I volunteered,
Yeah. It's
and
cool.
I loved it. And from those 3 days, I met guys from the Crusaders. I met Buddy Rich, saw all these artists who were no longer with us. And so that was my first time, like, these hands actually touching road cases. So
Yeah.
I helped building the stage. I got involved with becoming part of the changeover crew, putting the bands on and off, as assisting artists with their gear setup. And so when I graduated when I finished that 2-year program, I started working in nightclubs in Portland as a bouncer, and then I started working at a theater that the same promoter who ended up doing the jazz festival looked after, and there was a club called Starry Night in Portland, Oregon. And that's where I started doing stagehand work and doing everything from this club would come, this venue would have everybody from, Russ's former wife, Nicolette Larson,
Yeah.
playing there, Dan Fogelberg, Tim Weisberg, heavy metal bands, just a
Just everything.
wide spectrum.
Yeah.
So that's why I started working with artists, and, learning how to do load-ins, load-outs,
Yeah.
of this club. And one night, on an off chance, I went to go see John Lee Hooker. I was a fan. I wasn't working because there was no call because he was just traveling
Yeah.
with the
Just
band
him.
and his band. And then after the show, I hung out with this drummer. We got to talking, and I just said, "Man, yeah, I would love to go on the tour." Because a couple of we had folks in Portland at that time that were touring. Mike Manning or Manring was out with Quarter
Oh,
Five.
Michael Manring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where he
I love
started.
his playing.
So there was like techs that were already touring with your Quarter Flash. Quarter Flash was like the big band, and and then like Northwest Sound was out there. So all those sound
Yeah.
guys all worked with, Eagles and big bands. So there was like already a roadie network out of Portland and Seattle, and they just like, man, I'd like to tour. I'd like to go on the road. And I mentioned this to Tim Richards, John Lee Hooker's drummer, and he said, "No, Hook's thinking of getting a road guy." I go, "Yeah, oh, well, here's my phone number." Forgot about it. And then a short time later, I got a call from John Lee Hooker himself. Is this Yogi? And I go, "Yes, sir." He says, "Tim Richards, my drummer, says you're a very nice man, and you want to go on the road, And I go, "Yeah." He says, "Well, we stay in nice hotels, we play all kinds of different concert venues, blah blah blah." So the next thing I know, I'm being flown to San Francisco. I find out that it's all the band and crew in a van, a Dodge van. I'm doing I'm doing all the driving, $100 a day, no per diem, and out of that $100, that was up to you to pay for half your room or your whole room or that kind of thing. So from that tour, I learned.
Hold on. Let's let this thing roll through.
Love it.
They're rolling these carts of stuff. That's perfect.
I
This is
love it.
perfect.
It's kind of like paint noise.
Exactly. Dialing in the system here.
Dialing in the system.
Okay.
So yeah, that was my first time east of
I'm
California.
going to change hands. My arm is totally closed. Okay. Okay.
So that was my first time east of California.
Wow.
I'd never been out of the state of California except north up to Oregon and Seattle, but and off we went.
Yeah, the world opened up.
Yeah, so did all of Canada, the U.S., and like I was telling you earlier, through John, I met a lot of famous people in the music industry, artists, behind the scenes folks. So it was a learning experience,
Yeah.
And I got to driving behind the wheel. I pull up to a venue and I go, hey, I'm here. I work with Johnny Hooker. And he go, where's your crew? And I go, I'm it. I go, really? I go, yeah, I need a front of house guy, I need a monitor engineer, and I need a lighting guy, and all my gear's in the back. So that's where I got into what I call the uniroadie.
Yeah.
So one guy who sets up all the gear. And from those guys with Hook, I learned how to set up drums, basses, amps, and then working with engineers and counting other roadies. That's what got it going.
Wow.
So
what other? First off, I'm curious about this. How did you get the name Yogi?
Oh, that goes back from working in the forestry trade. When I got to Job Corps camp,
Yeah.
everybody had these nicknames, and I didn't want to. They used to call me Bear back in California, and so one day I'm in the dorms that we had at the Job Corps camp, and Yogi Bear came up, and I go, because Animal House was popular at that time,
Yeah.
and it was filmed in Oregon, so I didn't want some weird name like Pluto or something,
Yeah.
If I go, Yogi Bear's cool. I go, I just tell everybody to call me Yogi Bear. So, because I've been given that nickname Bear, I gave myself the nickname Yogi
Okay.
because I thought he was cool, and I didn't want to have a funky nickname because
Yeah.
everybody got one.
Yeah, and
you
then
know?
Bear eventually disappeared, just Yogi.
Yeah, and then once I started in this business, I found out that and I know there's an amazing technician, guy named Armando Garcia. And Armando Garcia is a backline tech, guitar tech extraordinaire, who started out with Oingo Boingo,
Okay.
and he's worked for Rage Against the Machine, Neil Young, Dwight Yoakam, on and on, Moody Blues. Great guy, but we know each other, so out of respect to him, I'm Armando Garcia, aka Yogi, or just
Yeah.
Yogi Garcia. He is the Armando Garcia, of the
He's
group.
uppercase.
Yeah, because he started out,
Yeah.
8 years before I did, but they just call him Mondo.
Okay.
Everybody knows Mondo, but yeah, that's how I got that nickname.
Oh, cool.
So it just half given, half picked by me, and it's easier to say than Armando. I had this weird thing, I don't know what that was about, where unless we were family, I didn't really want people calling me Armando, and I get weird about it. Now I give people the option. That's
Okay.
like with Lyle, when I first met Lyle, he goes, I'd prefer to call you Armando.
Okay.
And a lot of times when I say, he goes, Armando Garcia, how are you today? He says first
Yeah,
and last
the way
name.
that's what
so
he
yeah,
is.
so I've not that I never disliked my name. It's just I'm over that, whatever it was, where I just only wanted to be called Yogi and
Yeah.
Armando by my family.
Yeah.
So that's the story on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you've talked about all these other artists you've worked with. I mean, I find it really fascinating, all the different acts and the different, people you've been with. I'm sure people would be curious about that.
Well, when I worked with Johnny Hooker, I actually lived with him for 9 months out of that. So we come off the road and I would become his valet.
Okay.
It's the best way of putting it. I'd cook for him because he liked the way I made Southern food, chicken wings, black eyed peas. My cornbread is still this day slamming. I'd drive him around, and it was cool because he had a Mercedes, I forgot what year, SL, the Deuce Coupe,
Yeah.
which is a 2-seater. And then and then he had also the Cadillac, because it was a big thing with the blues guys. As
Yeah.
you played with Jimmy Reed,
Yeah.
and they had this notorious thing of desecrating each other's
Horrible.
Horrible,
Just
just
horrible.
crazy shit those guys did. And that was the other thing too. Working with John, I get like like direct stories about all these different performers, blues guys, you know,
Yeah.
and reminisce. We'd listen to music together, uh, you know, and there was a lot of artists who, like I said, were influenced by his playing and would show up, and then there was a lot of artists that he dug, you know, and when that jazz festival, one of the roadies that I met worked for the Crusaders. His name's Wes Leathers, and we stayed in touch. So when I was living in the Bay Area, I contacted Wes, and I said, "Hey, man, I'm working with John Lee. I got my first gig, and I'm living and working with John Lee Hooker, and they were playing over at the Berkeley Community Theater."
No, God, love that
So,
place.
so he set me up to go see the show. I go see it. You know, Carlos Santana, you know, one of my favorite artists in the band and people that he's had. So off I go, see the show, and I told Hook I was going. He let me use, you know, the Cadillac to drive over, or the van. We used to, I think it was the Dodge van, yeah. And I get over there and I see Wes, and after the show, and thank him, blah blah blah. And I say, hey, before I left the house, Hook said to give, you know, his number to Carlos. And so one day I'm at John's house, and like being part of the valet, you know, house dude, pick up the phone, Mr. Hooker's residence. It's like, oh, this is Carlos Santana. And like, you know, super fan that I was. I go, wow, hey Carlos, this is Yogi, Wes's friend. Hey man, how are you? How was the show? Blah blah blah. Oh, I loved it. And, you know, it was great. I said, yeah, I'll hook you up with Hook. And it was like a reconnection there between them from way back when. And I'm not blowing my own horn, but
No,
I was very. I feel like I was integral in getting You know, if you ask Carlos, he'll tell you. You know, like, and people that were around at that time, that I was kind of instrumental in reconnecting them together, and I'm very proud of that, because out of that came some beautiful music with the Healer and
Yeah.
concert appearances, and then everybody else kind of coming back into Hook's life. You know, that hadn't been in his life for a while.
Yeah.
There were musicians who stayed in touch with them all the time, like Van Morrison, you know, like totally influenced, but like was a friend. George Thorogood would stop by all the time. People, you know, who, you know, were into him. And, you know,
He has a deep place
oh,
in music, you
Yeah.
know, and you want to respect those people and hold on to them as long as you can, especially they're older than most of us were, and you don't want to lose them without having kind of milked all the joy you can out of being around them.
And then just being with him, like, you know, he would just go off, like, I'd play something, and he'd talk about his relationship with Jimmy Reed, Muddy Water, you know, and then would break it down to you on what it was like touring and starting out in the music business and being an African American, and the shit that you had to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, because of your nationality. Like he said, him and Eddie Kirkland did a duo, and they're traveling through the South, and they got pulled over by a Southern cop, and he made them like, you know, one of those, hey boys, you know,
Yeah.
you all musicians.
What was that movie, Green Book or whatever that was, about the black artist and his white driver, you know, touring the South, and
Yeah.
that was, you know, just seeing that whole world that those guys had to live in, where they could play in a place, but they couldn't stay there, and,
yeah. Like,
and
and you-
sleeping out in the car.
You're talking about two, you know, African American guys traveling through the South after
Yeah.
a gig and then getting pulled over. And he says, we had to take all our gear out and start, like,
Just show them.
you know, and he knew, but he just put him through that stuff
Yeah.
because of what he had to go through, you know. But then, you know, he would also talk about artists who, you know, who would, like, in front of other people go, hey, it's because of this guy. Like, people you wouldn't think of, but like Hank Williams, you know, Hank Williams Jr., like, you know, he was like one of Hook's best friends. And my first time coming out to the East Coast here, probably might have been North Carolina. Hank Williams had some serious cats. We were talking about that today, about Southern rock roadies. You didn't mess with them, you know, because those guys all packed and they were a gang. And
Yeah.
they watched out for each other because they were long hair and people were messing with them. You know, white dudes still
Yeah.
you're still having to deal with that. And so, you know, first time I come out here, it's like, you know, I'm walking somewhere and all of a sudden this Camaro pulls up next to me. And I think the cat's name was Bandana or And he was one of Hank's dudes.
Oh,
Hey
wow.
Yogi, how you doing? And he's sitting in the passenger seat, and he's got this really beautiful woman driving, and on the dash is like,
Wow.
the firearm, It's like, I go, man, I feel pretty good because like I got
Comfortable.
I said, it's all good, dude. It's all good. But yeah, like just hearing the stories of people he met who influenced and helped him, and what he had to go through.
Yeah.
Firsthand being ripped off by managers and songwriters for publishing and all that. And he
Yeah.
found a lawyer who was a bulldog for him, and that was how he was able to recoup and live a comfortable life.
Yeah.
So
Few of them got to.
Oh yeah.
I mean, most of them really got screwed bad.
And not just not just African American artists, but artists.
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
artists-
that's the nature of this
Oh,
business.
it's ruthless.
Yeah.
And that's what I found out right away, that it was ruthless. So after Hook, getting back to him, when I lived with him, that's how I ended up meeting my former wife. Because at the time when John couldn't get arrested or get a record deal, a guy out of Vancouver, British Columbia, named Richard Harrington, who's deceased, rest in peace. He used to play with the band out of Vancouver, Maurice and the Clichés. And his former fiance ended up marrying John, Millie, who
Wow.
was a photographer. So she's from Vancouver. She moves to the Bay Area. My former wife ended up being engaged to Richard. They never got married, and they came down to visit Hook. And Allison, my former wife, and Hook developed a friendship. And she would just call the house to check up on her, see how you're doing. And because when she was with Richard, Richard paid for John to come up and do a record in Vancouver with Tom Lavin and Jack Lavin from this band called the Powder Blues Band. And they were Chicago expats who ended up in Vancouver, still performing in Canada. So he went up there, they did the record, and he just kept making cassette copies from the Ampex dealer
Jesus.
down the street, and that's what sold around. They sold at the gigs. It was later, after he got popular, that it was kind of not well how they handled that as far as Richard being taken care of, but they ended up like repackaging and
Okay.
selling that record and pulled it that way. But through touring with John, I started meeting other roadies. One guy in particular was very helpful, moving me forward. Was a guy named Bondo, Steve Bond, who was out of Austin, Texas. And his claim to fame is he was like the crew for Stevie Ray Vaughan's first band, the Stingrays.
Okay.
He was the crew, same thing, but he'd show up with like full sound, full lights, and all that. So when I met Bondo, he was one of the roadies at that time for Los Lobos, Front of House guy. And he was working with the cowpunk band called Rank and File. So that was my second client. That used to be Alejandro Escovedo's first band. So I got into that, and then when I ended up, this woman, Allison, who was my former wife, I ended up seeing a cassette of hers, fell in love. That's how I ended up moving to Canada.
Okay.
So that's for the Canadian connection, which is tied in with people I worked with. And so because of Hook, and after I stopped working with Hook, I was living in Canada. And I worked, basically my third tour was with a Canadian blues guitarist named Colin James. And then through Colin, I met Jeff Healey. And when I was with Jeff Healey, I was getting, I had enough, not of Jeff, but of other people involved in his organization. And I happened to be, we were in LA, and we were staying at the Riot House, aka
Yeah, of course.
the Hyatt House.
The Continental.
And I'm walking by a room, and the door's open, and I hear this dude go, "Hey Yogi," and look to the right, and it's this guy named Mike McConnell, who is goes back to working with Norman Greenbaum, Foreigner, and when I met him, when I was bouncing at one of the nightclubs there, he came in on an off night, and I looked after him because he got pretty wasted. He's with Judas Priest, because they had a layover and staying over a few days. So Michael saw me and go, "Hey, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. Hey, I'm out with this band Slayer." I go, "I've heard of them." He goes, "What's going on with you?" "Oh, I'm out with Jeff Healey." "How's that going?" "Well, I don't want to hang out with them anymore, you know,
Mhm.
for certain reasons. I want to leave and go do other stuff.
Yeah.
And he says, well, that's funny because we need another guitar tech with Slayer because our guy's leaving. I go, really? And he goes, yeah, in about 2 weeks. I go, really? And I said, well, dude, I'd love to do that. So he goes, all right, cool, you're on. So I go and talk to the Healy camp, and I gave him my notice, 2-week notice, because that's about the time the changeover was going to go. And they said, no, you can't do that. And I said, well, yes, I can, and I am.
I am. Yeah. Bye.
And so once I ended up getting a gig, saying, well, Yogi, we don't need a guitar tech. We got a guy. I go, oh, okay. He says, but we need a drum tech. I said, oh, okay. And that's how I got involved, working with Slayer and Dave Lombardo. And that was like my first real tour, proper hotels, proper per diem, my first tour bus, an Eagle. They were the first band to take me to Europe,
God, that's great.
And I knew nothing about this genre. First day of rehearsal, having them run through the set, I was just like,
Yeah.
I felt like I'd done, like 15, Red Bulls or something.
Yeah. Jump right into
And
the frying
yeah,
pan, into the
And
fire.
I said, man, do you guys always play this fast? And they go, no, this record, we kind of slowed it down. But from them, they taught me a lot, like full production, traveling with sound, lights, PA, risers, the full dramatic part of of a show. Cloaking everything with do routine, intro music, house dim, pulling off, scrims. And this drum kit was huge. Dave showed me how to set it up, and it was weird. I just kind of went by ear, like what I thought from going to shows,
What sounded right.
what sounded right, like
Yeah.
my own scale, and it worked. And I just that's like with Hook, I just self-taught. I tell myself I'm a meat and potatoes tech, so that's one thing I've always tried to be straight up about, like what my level of skill set is.
Yeah.
And I've, because I'm not going to say, yeah, I could do that.
And then not.
Yeah. But then at the same time, I've been straight up about that. And people say, well, come out and try it. And I've learned on the gig and
Yeah.
been able to step up instead of having to step out.
Yeah.
So through the Slayer camp, started meeting more people, toured Europe, and when Slayer was off break, I started working with like different pop R&B acts. Like I was shortly out with Taylor Dayne. Then I go do a fill-in with like Faith No More on their first tour, and then more Slayer stuff, more thrash metal stuff, Jody Watley, stuff like that. And then I lucked out by working a local show for a production manager I knew from this jazz festival, John Morrison, who was very integral in my career, and another guy named Dick Adams, who used to work for the Heart Camp. They worked for John Morrison, which used to be anyway, another promoting company that was named after a bird in Seattle. I'm drawing a blank back.
That's okay.
But anyway, those guys taught me a lot about production and stage management. But through Dick and with John, I ended up working as a stagehand in Seattle for an Earth Day gig for Ann and Nancy Wilson's side project called The Love Mongers. And I got introduced to the Heart Camp, and I'm sad to say there was a tech, Doug Birch. That's weird that I just remembered his name out of the blue because we were trying to talk about. And Doug, great tech. I met him as a stagehand. He worked for Three Dog Night, and then he got involved with Heart. And he was also working with Lou Reed. And Doug unfortunately passed away on a motorcycle accident, and so the Heart Camp needed a road guy. So trial by fire, I come in to do not a Love Mongers thing, but a Heart gig, where they got back together to do this thing called The Road Home, which is a little taping for a DVD. And I said, well, who am I looking after? And they go, Howard Leese. So, so I I came into a situation, dude, where it's like working with a legendary band. They, like you, they had instruments just made for them. Howard had like a first or second Paul Reed Smith guitar ever made by
Wow.
Paul. You know, that kind of stuff. And man, it was like I was in over my head, but I was going to give it my best shot. And they did this taping, and on the spot, I learned about Nashville tuning, 12 strings, mandolins, blah, blah, blah. And I survived that. But on the gig, which was very integral in my future touring career, Fernando Saunders was the bass player.
Yeah.
With Denny Fongheiser, the drummer, they were the rhythm section. And I knew Fernando's history from seeing him with Jeff Beck on the Wire tour, seeing him play with Lou Reed, and Marian Faithfull, Mahavishnu.
Oh, yeah.
So I
His,
said,
his,
seriously.
his creds are deep.
Yeah, and he goes, dude, I dig your vibe. Fernando, if you've ever met him, he's just like, hey man, I dig your vibe. We're gonna do something together. And I go, oh, cool. So I was working with the Heart Camp, doing more Slayer stuff, and then mid-90s, I get a call from this tour manager, heavy hitter named Tim Woolley, going, hello, this is Tim Woolley. He's very English, and he's a big-time tour accountant, still with the Stones, and worked with Pink Floyd, all that, and tour manage. So he was just like taking a little gig, so he's working with Lou Reed. And he says, you've been highly recommended by Mr. Fernando Saunders, and we need to expand our crew for Lou Reed. And I'm on the phone, and I'm just trying to be cool as hell, but I'm just thinking, oh my God.
Yeah.
How many times did I listen to Rock and Roll Animal and Take a Walk on the Wild Side,
Yeah.
and Berlin and on. So all this is, I'm just trying to be cool. Oh, yeah, sure, And what's your rate? It's like, hey man, whatever, if you're straight up with me, whatever you can afford, the budget sounds cool with me. And they aimed to figure it. I just went,
I'm glad I didn't talk.
So that started a relationship with Lou for 5 years.
Oh, that's great.
So when Lou was off, I'd work with the Heart Camp, and like I said, through both of them, I learned so much about like high-end gear, and I learned a valuable lesson with those guys. Don't bullshit any artists, especially old school artists.
Yeah.
Because you guys know it all. You've been there, done that. It's like, dude,
Yeah.
don't disrespect me like that, by telling me what I already know.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned too that like you just got to be honest, like about your skill set. And the answer of like a problem is like, I don't know if you don't know. It's like, I don't know what happened, but I'll figure it out and try my best to make sure it never happens.
Yeah.
again. And being sincere about that.
Yeah.
Not just bullshit.
Not just be, yeah.
And so it was like, like I said, Canadian artists working with, the Heart Camp on and off for 10 years. The Slayer Camp turned out to be an 8-year run with them. Lou was 5. And then I got involved with some other projects, but I was partying a lot, smoking a lot of weed and drinking, getting into the whole rock and roll roadie lifestyle. And about 2021, and then during this time I started working with Natalie Cole, which was like an on and off relationship for 10 years, doing backline production management. But that's when, around that time is when I got to get sober. So
Yeah.
for 22 years, that's been a big part of the thing. And unfortunately, I was very sad to say that Lou he liked my work, appreciated my work, but he never saw me in a sober capacity.
Yeah.
Because I think, I've gotten so much better. I think it's like players too, when they finally decide to get clean.
Yeah. They don't want to be around the people that knew them.
Well, no, it's not even that, but their playing has gotten so much better. I think, they feel that too. So I think my work and everything stepped up and
Okay.
what have you. And it was.
Because I found with some that when they cleaned up, they kind of wanted to bring in a whole new camp that only knew them in the clean version of them, and they don't want, every time they would look at you, you would remind them of what they were.
Yeah, no, I definitely, fortunately it hasn't happened to me, but I know roadies, technicians, you know, behind the scene folks that like have been that reminder of
Yeah.
that artist's bad past. Or I've even seen it where they remind that artist of like when they were just starting out, they had no money and they were with that partner who put up with all their crap and supported them.
Yeah.
And then once they got rich, then the new partner came in,
Gone.
and so they see that too.
Yeah.
And you know, and which is, I mean, you're happy for that artist's success, but you kind of like are like going, you know, I remember that person you were with who like, you know, kept you clothed and fed and housed.
Yep.
And then now you just like, you know,
They're gone. They're
you
gone.
take them off like a pair of dirty socks.
Yeah.
You know? And you know, so there's that flip side. And so, but it's been the opposite for me, where people that I worked with who were partying really hard have called me, made a point to call me that, hey, I've gotten to that point where I'm going to drink from the well and I'm going to check in, and you were integral in
Yeah.
making me go there. Because there's been tours where I've been on, where I've been the only cat that wasn't partying, but I never vibed anybody out, and I
Yeah.
still don't, because I did it for me.
For me, it's the same thing.
Yeah, your lifestyle, you know, you've never been interested in that. You've led that clean lifestyle, and your peers that I've been fortunate enough to work with, you know, they've just said that, and you know, other cats like you, it's why they've stayed busy, because you were reliable.
Yeah.
You weren't dealing with those demons that come with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I've lost, you know, I've been fired, and it's not a good feeling, you know, and thankful my guardian angels were not, you know, taking a break, because I could have died, you
Yeah.
know, in some situations. And it's just like, I think about it, it's just, yeah, it shudders me, man. Like, you know, I could have been in a prison in Mexico doing time right now. We wouldn't be talking. We would never met. So, you know,
Wow.
I just, you know,
Yeah.
that's, you know, this thing is that I do has been my life. You know,
Yeah.
that's how I got to Canada. You know, that's, you know, how I met my former wife, who was awesome. You know, and all the people that I've met within the business. So it was like two parts to my career: the party, you know, up to this time, the beginning, learning, getting into like the mainstream, grooving,
Yeah.
you know, the flying, and then getting involved with the sober, you know, dealing with it on the sober aspect. And so moving forward into the 2000s, I ended up working with like Smash Mouth for a while. That was pre sober, you know, great band. And my apologies to them for the wild stuff that we got off to. Same with The Offspring. The Offspring was a great opportunity I had, and I totally blew that. And I always wanted to like have a face-to-face with Dexter and Noodles and just tell them, you know, hey man,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry I let you guys down. Because they fired me and rehired me, but it was like before cell phones, so I ended up getting back from where I was at instead of
Yeah.
getting off the plane in the UK, where I could have continued working with them.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's, you know, that's the other thing you find out is like what you messed up, you know. But, you know, you got to move forward.
Yeah,
The
that's
past
it.
is a past.
Yeah.
So, and then I ended up working with Short Time for the Fray. And let me see. I'm trying to think. There was, and that was like a couple years that I worked with those guys. Oh, and then I worked with the Hanson Boys.
Oh, great.
You know, their acoustic tour.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about a work ethic. Those cats. I ended up working with the Psychedelic Furs, Richard Butler, lovely, lovely guy who's like my friend to this day. When Billy Squire got back together, worked with him. The guys out of Boston, Extreme, Northern Words.
Yeah, I know.
When those guys got back together, ended up spending 8 years and going to parts of the world I'd never seen. And then, believe it or not, I got involved with Paul Anka and his band for like 8 years. And talk about a band stocked with like super talent, you know.
Yeah,
percussion,
no
Machito
kidding.
Sanchez, Graham Lear, one of my favorite drummers from Santana, what have you. And, you know, and then from that, those people being involved with like David Foster. So, you know, been working with David Foster, filling in for JD, their main guy, who's the Unirodi. So, looking after one of your main partners in crime, J.R. Richardson.
Absolutely.
You know, who's like, you know, the Beast, I call him. You know, just a lovely guy and a great dude. You know,
Yeah.
on the kit, he's like you. When he steps up there, it's all business. You know,
No, absolutely.
like with Russ, and he leaves it up there. You know,
Yeah.
you guys like, you know, just you know, and that's
It's what we do.
yeah. I did a short run with Ani DeFranco, and Maceo Parker was our support act,
Oh, cool.
and Bruno Sprite was a guitar player, and I can't remember who the bass player. But those cats, when they would just walk on stage, just like the way they grabbed their instruments and put them on, you just like by the way they
Chomping at the bit.
no, just the way they grab their shit, just like you do when you put your bass on. It's like, oh shit, these
Yeah.
guys, I mean,
Ready to do it.
It's business.
Yeah.
It's going down. You
Yeah.
know? And yeah, so you know, like I said, working with David, and then with the Anchor Camp, Rick Fantel was a production manager for Lyle. So in 2019, I ended up doing half of the big band tour,
Oh, okay.
and then a couple more dates after that, and then it was supposed to be David Foster again going into Lyle, but I didn't do when the 2019 ended. I ended up stage managing a 3D hologram tour as a stage manager.
Oh, okay.
Maria Callas with like 52-piece orchestra around the world, different orchestras and what have you. And I learned a lot about classical orchestra instruments and classical artists.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like their own.
It's another animal
It's
altogether.
you know, their own entity.
Yeah.
And then did that, and then the same company, Friends of Lyle's Bass Hologram, out of Houston, ended up working with their production of Roy Orbison, Buddy Holly hologram thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I mean, it's so insane. The hologram thing is unbelievable.
yeah, so yeah, did that, and then we had our you know, our involuntary two-year retirement for all of us in the industry.
Yeah.
Where we like really like for the first year of the situation, I couldn't even look at a live video, you know. And when I finally did, it was so bizarre because I go, oh, there's an artist I worked with out of Canada, off and on, Kim Mitchell, lovely guy, great guitar player. Mike, our tour manager, worked with him back in the day, but just incredible guitar player. He used to have a band called Max Webster, in tight with the Rush Camp and what have you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and you know, turn it on. What's the first thing I see? But you know, Kim Mitchell at a festival, and who's the guy handling the guitar? Me, you know. It was
Wow.
just like, the waterworks, dude. Because it was
Yeah.
like the first thing I saw. It was pretty emotional because like it just really drove home how much I miss. You know, miss
Yeah.
doing what I do.
Yeah.
You know, which is all about like trying to look after my artists so that way the people out in the audience have a good time and
Yeah.
forget whatever the hell's going on with them. For
And that the artist is having a great time because they're not
yeah.
stressed over things going wrong
Yeah.
on stage or
Yeah,
anything for
yeah.
them.
And so there's been situations where stuff obviously has gone wrong, you know, and I try not to, but I do take it personally. You
Yeah.
know, because I want my artist to have a good time.
Yeah.
You know, knock on wood, we've only had one of those situations that we
Yeah,
sorted out.
barely.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it does. It bums you out.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, I'm sure, you know, if you've had a bad gig, it bums you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just because you just want to like bring it. you
Yeah.
know, every night. So.
Yeah.
So after our temporary retirement, Lyle was nice enough to ask me on the acoustic tour, and then in between that, I started doing more fill-in gigs for JD with Foster. So up till now, it's been pretty busy working with you guys and with David, you know. And unfortunately, because people wonder why does Yogi walk the way he's walking right now. I've developed, I don't know if it's a compressed disc thing in my back, which is manifesting in sciatica, or if I need to get my hip replaced.
Okay.
So that's why you see me kind of like looking like Festus from Gunsmoke on deck, you know. I'm not in pain, it's just my mobility is sucks at this time.
So you're going to look into that when you get back.
Well, yeah, that's the main thing, you
Good.
know, because it's like I'm not even like looking at more job offers. I just
Yeah.
want to get this addressed and sorted out. And I've been thankful to Mike and the Lyle camp for not saying, "Hey, dude, you know, you need to go home." You
Yeah.
know, because apparently I'm still able to do the gig. Thankfully.
Yeah, well, this gets down to quality of life,
Yeah.
you know. So you want to get these kind of things done so where you can get back to your normal routine and not have to be altering your life to accommodate a physical ailment.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that's Kim Mitchell, bless his heart, did say, "Oh, you're 60 now. Welcome to the club." Stuff's gonna start falling apart. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
well-
but the thing is like Russ, you, anybody, and you know, there are just things that develop because of the industry.
Yeah,
You know, like we call it the old man lounge on our bus. Like during our 10 plus hour drive today, we all end up sitting in the front having coffee, talking about what's
hurting.
what's hurting.
I know.
You know what
It's
I
so weird. Who would have ever thought? You
Yeah,
know,
you
it's
know,
like
it's
you
like-
suddenly turned into grandpa up
Yeah,
there.
like your man JR says, you know, we used to go in the bathroom now and ask about what kind of floss that people using. And then Russ is saying, I got to find the most comfortable seat I can for these 2.5 hour shows. And you
Yeah.
wear your wristband because of
Yeah.
your situation with your hand.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, like,
But at the end of the day, you get to bring it on and you get to do a show.
yeah.
And
And,
that's-
and then once you're in the zone,
Yeah.
be it loadout or whatever, it's like those athletes that go out there. You forget about
Yeah.
what's bothering you.
Yeah, you deal with it after the gig's over,
You
and
have
you're
to.
done, and you're sitting there reflecting, and then all of a sudden you go, "Oh man!" Like,
Yeah, and you know, while I was out here, when I went and saw a chiropractor, you know, he says, "What are you gonna do? Go home and not work?" He goes, "Staying mobile is what you need to do."
yeah,
So you know, it's just like on top of getting sourced out, it's like yoga and stretching is like, you know, part of the deal. You know?
yeah,
But you know, we've got 2 weeks left on this. What are we out for? 2.5 months.
yeah,
You know, it's been intense. And
It's
you guys,
intense.
You guys do like a 2.5 hour show. Even with the Isaac thing, it's like 70 to 90 minutes,
yeah,
which is a lot of people's normal.
yeah,
And then your rehearsal, you know, and
Yeah.
because of the size of this organization, you know, that's why it's got to be, you know, 5-6 shows in a row. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, you can't support this by doing
And
having
yeah.
4 shows a week. you
No,
know.
not at all. Oh, what did Russ get delivered?
What'd you get, Russ?
No way. Well, I think that's a good time to like wrap
I
this
think
up.
let's go visit Russ and eat some of his food.
Yeah, at least find out where you ordered it
Yeah,
from. Plus,
Yogi-
I'm gonna go get my massage. Damn, I need to
You need to leave now?
now because it's scheduled for 6:30. Thank you for being
That's
such
the
an
hand
awesome,
of my brother.
an awesome dude. Look at that.
Love you, Yogi.
Love you too.
Man, just everybody's gonna be thrilled to see
And
you.
to your fans out there, thank you for being so nice and coming up and saying lovely things to all of us.
It's great.
Not
It's-
just me, but anybody that pops up in your videos. You
Yeah.
know? And it's crazy because I don't get to see what you see. So, but then I get to see what you see,
yeah,
which kind of completes it. You know, like
Yeah.
the tours of the theaters and all that. Because basically,
You're working.
I just come in. I'm on stage. That's my
Yeah.
my zone.
yeah. While you're setting up, I'm out there wandering around like some old
which is-
homeless dude.
But it's cool though. you
I
know,
love
like,
it. I love it.
It's so anyway.
Okay, boss.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good massage.
Thank you. I will.
Okay, and then come back to the room after you're done.
And
I'll be gentle with
and
you.
it won't be inappropriate. I have to tell y'all folks, legit.